We do it because we love telling stories and we love inspiring others. The energy that we give and that we receive fuels us. So I'm so happy to be here with all of you.
Hi, I'm Josh Groban, and this is EW's Around the Table with the Tony Awards.
Some of us are nominated in this group for new work and some for revivals. What are the challenges of approaching those different things? Do you find one easier than the other? How do you feel about that? Jeanine, I want to ask you this question.
I knew it, Arden. I knew you were coming for me. There are challenges in both, right? Because what you're, like, for instance, what you do with Parade and what happened with Into the Woods was, I know both pieces really well. And for both productions, they really taught us a new way to listen and to watch those shows. So it's a revisitation for something new like Kimberly Akimbo. I have no idea how it's going to work. And I think that's really scary because, there are no guarantees at all. And I think it's a different kind of fear that you're putting something in front of an audience. And it's also, when we say it hits the time, I don't know how it's going to hit the time. And I think that's true for revivals and for new shows. It's not just the show. If you look at the history of musicals, some that didn't succeed in 1975 are now running for 26 years, having opened 26 years ago. So it's a gamble both ways.
And for Death of a Salesman, we approached it that we had an obligation to both. You have an obligation to all the themes and all the messages of the play that Arthur Miller wrote 73 years ago. But at the same time, you want to make sure to have some insight to present it today. And this time that there's variables that should speak to the audiences today. And that's what a good revival should do. Our interpretation heightened that with an African-American family. If there's someone who knows how the American dream can become an American nightmare, it's from an African-American experience. And so without changing a word, it gave a new insight to it. There were times that people came up to me after the play and said, "Did you guys add that? I don't remember that from the play." And I said, "Nothing was changed." And that's the obligation to the tradition of the classic and the obligation to bring something new is what a revival does. And I think that, Arian, you guys did the same thing with The Doll's House.
Yeah, in our version, it's also tricky because it's also a new adaptation, so it's also a new play. There's so much baggage with these characters because everyone knows these characters. Immediately when you say that you're playing Torvald in A Doll's House, everyone's like, well, ready to hate him. You're battling with a lot of preconceived notions on that as well. But what's really kind of cool with A Doll's House specifically, and why I think it's sadly still very relevant today, is that the themes that, especially the way that Amy and Jamie kind of put it out there, are so present day, but they're actually from the Ibsen. And again, I'm an Iranian immigrant, so when the Iranians see the show, they think the show is about Iran, current day Iran. It's amazing how even with a revival like A Doll's House, these themes just feel even more present today. I felt that same way when I was watching Death of a Salesman, Wendell.
The last time Sara and I were on Broadway, we were in two new works. One, I was in Dave Malloy's Great Comet of 1812, and Sara was in and wrote Waitress. And now we both find ourselves in widely beloved, widely recognized as masterpiece Sondheim revivals. The pressure there is great as well. It's yours to mess up in some ways, and at the same time, you're also owing it to a piece that's considered a classic, to put your own twist on it and to add freshness to it. And I think that, as everybody else has said so eloquently, when you do that right, you're doing it for people who've seen it 50 times, and you hope that they enjoy it as one of the versions that they're seeing. And the really fun thing is when people haven't seen the work, and you know that for that night, for those few people, you're the one carrying the torch for that person who can then say that was their first. And that, I think, is a really, really fun thing that is similar to doing a new work, to introduce it to somebody for the first time.
I got the opportunity to work on a show, Parade, which premiered in 1999, but only ran about, a month and a half. So most people are coming to it as a new piece of theater, even if they know the score. So it's been interesting to understand that I sort of have to interpret the piece, but also start over with it. So it's been an interesting challenge to both stand on the shoulders and let the piece stand on our shoulders, so that the audience ultimately isn't thinking about what's outside the theater or what existed before, but they're just sort of on the ride in time with the story.
I think, and Juliet, Lorna, for you was really kind of incredible, is it's really new and old, because you're taking things, you know, these songs that are already done and having us string them together in a new way, right?
It's so creative how you can take something, a story like Romeo and Juliet, and bring in like Shakespearean styled costumes, but also hip hop dance styles and clothing styles. Being in a Broadway show in of itself is challenging, but we do it because we love telling stories and we love inspiring others. The energy that we give and that we receive fuels us. And it's a wonderful time that Broadway is revived, because we just came from this pandemic. So I'm so happy to be here with all of you.
I, enjoyed Some Like It Hot and was like, wow, what a fun property. And then once it was on my shoulders to like have people come to a theater and sit and watch it, I was like, oh, let's gut this thing. Almost instantly. At some point, you gotta look at it honestly, right? Wasn't nobody thinking about us when they wrote that movie? So, I mean, it does make you feel a little freer in your interpretation of it. And if you love it, then you will also do right by it. So when you're straddling, the actors and today and what the movie was and what it stood for, your love for that movie will make a great anchor that will allow you to soar, because anchors famously allow people to soar. I'm a mess, but you get it.
We can't stay here. Chicago's too hot. You're right. Search every band, every dance hall from here to Timbuktu.
And when a saxophone starts wailing, I pray someone lends a hand before he breaks my aching heart in two.
Into the Woods was the first production after Steve's passing. There was a lot of tenderness in and around the material. I felt like it was really important to hold the work sacred and to, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Kind of just really honor the material in its truest form and try to stay very available to just a really pure interpretation through the lens of me. Let's put the orchestra dead center. There's no set. This is, community theater adjacent. This is like, it is all about the words and music, this incredible script, this beautiful score. I never got to meet Steve. So he remains this sort of like monolith in my mind, but I felt very intimidated, but really honored to get to go on the journey of telling that story that they created.
Steve did know that he knew that Into the Woods was happening though, right? Did he know? Yeah. So same with Sweeney. Like I feel very privileged that we at least knew that he was excited and he knew that it was happening. And it was something that he was aware of, that this work was going to have a resurgence and a revival and that lots of new audiences were going to see it. And Sondheim passed away for us 2 days before we were to start our first kind of music workshop of getting it off the page. And so, as Sara said, in that grief, and one of the great things that we regret is we don't get to ask him, we don't get to pick his brain through the process of rehearsal, because he writes in such puzzles. And even when you think Sondheim's work for 40 some years, there's always new things to discover. And so to have had the opportunity to know him a little bit before this was wonderful.
I think that the thematic energies of Succession are pretty anti-capitalist. And I think the sentiments of A Doll's House have more feminist leanings. And so I kind of thought of them immediately as different kind of like spiritual attacks on, social norms and social society. I don't really understand much of the financial jargon that's happening there. I need to sit down, just tell me what's going on. And basically at the end of it, and I tell you, basically at the end of it, it's all about I want this thing that you have, and you want this thing that I have. And that's basically the energy. I am going to tell one story, and I tell a story to everyone. Jeremy knows everything about finances now, derivatives and capital structure, whatever those words are. And so one time we're improvising, and he's saying all of this stuff. He's like, the derivative of the market value of the this and that. And I was like, I have no idea what he's saying. And I said, why are you bothering me? That's what I said. So that's kind of gives you how much I was like, why are you bothering me with this? Don't you have people to deal with this?
The actual fact is, we're persuading more and more shareholders every day that we offer them just a slightly better chance for them to make a little bit more money on their dollar. And that's all that this is.
It is a great honor to be in the company of this small fraternity of men who have played the role on Broadway. I mean, just to know that a play that has been around for almost 75 years, that you are in the company of Lee J. Cobbs, George C. Scott, Dustin Hoffman, Ryan Dennehy, and Philip Seymour Hoffman, and now Wendell Pierce. That's just a great honor. When it comes to being the first African-American to play it, when I hear that, it should be an embarrassment as Americans. To go, wow, this is the first woman to do this. This is the first Black man to do that. It shouldn't be a badge of honor. There should be a badge of shame. Because I think about also another group of men who, because of that ignorance of cultural prohibition, never got to play the role. James Earl Jones, Roscoe Lee Brown, Earl Hyman. God, we just lost Harry Belafonte. So in that way, I think of those two groups of men when I was doing the role. The small fraternity that I joined and the fraternity of men whose performances we'll never know. And I have an obligation to both. We didn't have to do an African-American version. We just did the play. Did not change anything. And in one particular scene when I'm in, I really fought for this because they thought that the woman I have the affair with should not be a white woman. It should be a Black woman. I said, oh, no. So much more is at stake. But if it's a white woman, I mean, the danger that a Black man having an affair with a white woman in 1932 in Boston, right? And then being caught with her by his son, and this white woman says, all I have to do is walk out of this room. The danger of that line rings out.
Sometimes the question comes up, should our categories be gendered? As someone who's lived this luxury, a Black lady said she lived luxury, but you know what I mean. As a cishet lady, I'm so severely spoiled that I couldn't even begin to friggin' the amount of thinking and work and research and people you would have to talk to in order to be able to answer the question, should these roles be gendered? I mean, should these categories be gendered? Doesn't it seem like one of the things we will be saying was silly in the future? Like every once in a while you run into something and you go, that's severely now, but it's also quite old. But, again, I shouldn't have said because I'm not a part of the group. Lorna, what do you say when people ask you about that?
I mean, this is the 76th Tony Award. 76 years have passed and a lot has changed since then. We couldn't have done this back then, like all of us here, right? So times have changed. What I love about our show is that and Amber's show, it embraces inclusivity and diversity in so many different ways. I don't believe that there should be gendered categories. I think that, as an actor, I call myself an actor, right? So it could just be that. I feel just so blessed and honored to represent a show that is all about inclusivity and positivity. and uplifting and encouragement. And I'm so glad that that's what Broadway looks like.
One of the things I'm super proud about, and I want to give our producers a ton of credit for this, is that we did a ton of outreach and we brought in boatloads of kids into these productions. Watching little girls in particular of color see Patina Miller stand in the middle of that stage and bring the house down every night was one of my favorite, because I would be standing in the back, watching her. My place on stage was upstage of her, and I would watch their little faces, transfixed. And I felt very lucky to have that experience, because also those kids have no theater decorum whatsoever. So they are yelling at things. They are interrupting all kinds of things with their joy and squeals and look at her, mommy, and all the kind of stuff. But it reminds you of that's what we're here.
When I do my first kill and people applaud, that's a strange, dark realization that the audience we've got them, but they may feel guilty about it on the ride home.
In Parade, the end of the act, Leo Frank is sentenced to hang, and intermission. So I think it's. I'm always fascinated by how people react, and it's different every night. Like some nights people are like, "Oh, what do I do?" And then of course some people are like, "Oh, it's a big button of a number," and I'm gonna applaud and go get my sippy cup of vodka. I love when audiences are torn between two things sometimes.
After the song, everybody, rock your body, huge dance number, just lights, the stage lifts. The applause and the screams last at least 60 to 90 seconds every single day. And I wish that I could see what's going on, on stage. I feel it, and I'm so happy.
I would say in Kimberly Akimbo, it's this something that's shown at the end of the show. And it's really very funny. And so you hear people laughing and then they start going, and hearing this belly laugh turn into this belly cry is when the first night that happened, I thought I'd never heard that before. It was just not even crying through laughter or laughter through tears. It was one that had received the energy of the other. And I thought, well, that's our show.
In Doll's House, I have these 3 words, which I also won't spoil, that I say that the entire audience just gasps at the exact same time. And it is a real, and then it becomes the most quiet 1,000 people in a room ever. Because it just turns so completely opposite.
As a kid, I imagined myself on stage. So when I started working on Waitress and I was on the creative team and writing music, I was so off the map of anything I had ever imagined for myself. And I was so stuck in the question of, can I even do this? It felt impossible most of the time. This is the dream. This is the realization of that little, singing into a hairbrush. All of those very childlike fantasies of getting to be on a stage someday. Competition's not my bag at all. And so this I think we can get tricked into getting into the toxicity of a competitive environment. This is a real celebration of this community at large and the work that theater makers do for the world. Because I believe it saves lives. It saved mine. So I just celebrate the community at large. I feel so lucky to be a part of it.